So welcome to today's CG Talk on this Friday, the 13th of November. You made it. The talk today is on integrating feminine and masculine leadership energies for a better business world with Lyssa Adkins, whom we'll introduce in a moment, and Ariga Martin, member of General Management Council 6 and head of digital savings at Forsyth Bar Limited. As she said, she's coming to us from New Zealand, a little bit of a difference in time. So thanks for joining us on your Saturday. I'm Brittany Crown. Quick housekeeping note, we will be taking questions. We'll save those for the end. So please input those in the chat as they happen along the way. And Charlie is here with me, though you can't see her, she's in the background. And we'll be capturing those questions to share with Lyssa after. So that'll be the last segment of the call. I'm really excited about this talk today. I've long held an interest in leadership methodologies, coaching, and the like. So super excited to hear what Lyssa has to say. So without taking more oxygen, I'll hand it over to Ariga, who's responsible for connecting us with Lyssa in the first place. So she's got a little bit more background.
Great, so great to be here. And thank you for the opportunity, Brittany, to be involved in bringing an amazing person like Lyssa to the Collaborative Game Councils. I am such a big fan of Lyssa. She's been one of my Agile celebrity heroes, leadership heroes for a long time now. Right up there with, the likes of Jeff Patton, Jeff Gotelf. Her views and what she has brought over the years with her well-known book, Coaching Agile Teams, a keynote talk that she's going to touch on today, have just really got my mind turning and thinking about essential ingredients in leadership that you don't often find in traditional management books. And as we all have been experiencing this insane year, 2020, and all of the highs and lows and polarized views, it feels like now more than ever, we've got to really dig deep and be really open and curious and probably willing to learn new skills to get through these times. They're just, the traditional systems and approaches aren't necessarily working in a lot of these crazy times. To me, it feels like they're almost superpowers that we need to learn about and really reflect on and start to bring into the practice of our daily leadership. Lyssa is definitely going to cover some of these things for us, how to be more balanced. And just a really big disclaimer here, when I first started learning about this content from Lyssa, it's not a gender thing at all. In fact, you would have seen in the introduction, we're talking about a little bit yin and yang energies and how those come in a balanced way. I'm the first to admit that I'm probably much more yang and often forget about my yin. And so it's really a way of looking inside and reflecting on potentially how you can make that balanced position and perspective. So there's this really great quote actually that I want to mention, I'll end on, that kind of sums it up. And just with this year and how things seem to come at the right time and or the not the right time, and your resilience is tested every day. It feels like, some days feel like a whole week. But I'll leave you with this quote that kind of sums it all up. But before I get there, I just want to talk a bit more about how I met Lyssa. I met her a few years ago. I was lucky enough to be in person with her here in Wellington. Several of the Agile groups I'm involved with here in New Zealand just really rate her book and have used it for large-scale transformations at big banks, BNZ, several other Australasian organizations. She was with a group of really energized, engaged people, and I was in the room with her, and it was really an incredible moment. She really spoke from the heart and from a place of humanity that you just don't see in the corporate world. And it was incredible. It was like being enveloped in this blanket of security. And so since then, I've actually worked with her and indirectly with groups she's part of. I've actually invested in several people on my team going through a leadership program called 10 Women Strong. I've organized several people in cohorts now, and 4 people on my team go every quarter. And that's been hugely successful in helping young women find their confidence and their voice. Lyssa might actually touch on that later in her talk. That would be good. It's a really great resource for people who are just starting their journey. So I won't leave you any longer. I am really excited and proud and privileged to be able to introduce you to Lyssa. She's a wonderful resource, and I really am looking forward to this keynote that she's now given a few times. Lean USA, Agile Alliance Australia, several big keynote talks. And she's told me in our preparation and in our meetings that we've had to date that she's working on a bit of a manifesto around this, on what this wholeness strategy needs to look like in the corporate world and how we all look at leadership in a more balanced way, digging deep into those skills that are required in these really trying times, you know, when your resilience is really being tested and you're at the bottom of your barrel. So this quote that came up just with quite a bit of synchronicity at the right time last week, when we've been looking at our own culture deck and the way we operate together and going through the highs and lows of startup and launching our new product, just seemed to come at the right moment. It's an F. Scott Fitzgerald quote, and I'll read it to you as a bit of an intro to Lyssa. The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the end at the same time and still retain the ability to function. And to me, this really sums up what balanced leadership could be and needs to be to help us rise above the tension points, the disagreements, always find a way forward and not leave people behind. And I wonder, is this possible? And maybe Lyssa, you'll tell us. So without any further ado, I'd love to hand you over to my dear friend, Lyssa.
Oh, thank you, Olga. That is beyond sweet. And hello, everyone. Thank you for your time and attention. You know, attention is the most precious thing we have to give one another. And so for whatever reason that you showed up, you're interested in this topic, however that's working out for you, I'm glad you're here. Olga already touched on it. All you have to do is say the words feminine or masculine, and all of a sudden, you know, a lot of people's nervous systems get activated, and maybe you've already felt that happen in you a little bit, and that's okay. We are moving into terrain together for the next half hour or so, and then we're going to be spending more time together doing Q&A. In this terrain, you know, we're moving into places where people have been wounded, where the notions of feminine and masculine put people into boxes and restrict their expression of who they truly are, and even where people have been physically harmed for some of these notions in our long history as human beings. So I think what I would say about this is expect that your nervous system might get a little activated, and keep breathing, and know that we are in an inquiry together. I'm not here to tell you that something is better than something else. I'm not here to tell you that there's a right way to be a leader in this world. I'm here to explore with you this really key question that I'm working with, and that the leadership teams I coach are working with. And it's simply this: if we invite more feminine leadership energy into everything we do we create better business outcomes, and do we create a better world? And I happen to believe those two things are inextricably tied together. So if I do or say something in the next half hour that creates a sort of a disconnection between you and me, know that that's not my intention at all, and count on me to stick around and clean it up with you. I want you to bring that. Well, we will struggle through it together. So to get us ready to be receptive to the messages that are going to be coming, both the provocative angles of this and then the practical angles of it, I want to invite us into a little bit of a space of calm and centered. I can feel my own nervousness rising right now, and so this will help me too. So we're going to do something called centering in dignity, belonging, and sufficiency, and this is something Oregon knows from the 10 Women Strong programs, because we do this often with those groups, and it's something that comes to us from somatic coaching. So to the extent you're willing, and actually if you've been sitting for a long time, it might be a good idea to stand up. Or if you've been standing up, sit down. Give your body a little bit of a difference. And put your gaze out about 8 or 10 feet. You might close your eyes if that feels really comfortable to you, but you don't have to. We are doing this so that we can come into the same present time together. And so our minds can hear and receive and work with the ideas that are coming at the same time. So how it starts is noticing your uprightness, that you can imagine or feel the sensation of where your tailbone ends. And in your imagination, draw your attention all the way up the back of your spine and out the back of your head. And just notice that we have this aspiration as human beings to be upright, to aspire. This is your length. This is the dimension of your dignity, your ability to stand in your own worth, and your ability to see others' worth. Just allow yourself to relax into that essential dimension of your mind-body energy system. The second dimension is width. Now, we don't think about this one very much, but just imagine from hip to hip, from shoulder to shoulder. You might actually, if you're standing up, you might move back and forth a little bit on your feet until you can find the place where you are comfortably in the center. Your width is the dimension of belonging. Belonging to yourself, to the extent you let other people in, belonging to other people. You can even imagine that all of us, even though we don't even know each other's faces right now, I'm so excited to see your faces in about a half an hour. But right now, that's not even necessary because we can imagine that we are in the same room together and we can actually belong in the same conversation together. So breathe into your width, to your essential belongingness. And the third dimension is your depth. Now for this one, you might take a hand and put it on your belly and take another hand and put it on your back. So what we're looking at is your volume, essentially what's in between your two hands. And just notice that your body does have volume. That in front of your hand is everything that is yet to come. We're not there yet. It's coming, but we're not there yet. And behind your hand, in the back, is everything that got you here. All the generations that had to succeed in order for you to be here. And all the teachers and all the people that have helped you in your own life. This is your dimension of sufficiency. That for this very moment, you are sufficient unto this task. You are enough, and more than enough is on the way for whatever is coming in that hand in front of the one on your belly. So one last breath into your sufficiency, your depth, into shoulder to shoulder, your width, and all the way up your spine, your length, your essential dignity and self-sovereignty. So thank you. To the extent that you are willing to do that, and to the extent that you feel you're more present now, thank you. So I want to move us into this territory by painting the picture of where we've been in the business world and why we are all recovering from a certain sort of shallow masculine energy that has dominated the business world for quite a long time now, several generations. So this is a little Spark Shorts by Pixar. It's an amazing short film. It's called Pearl. And it's about this fluffy little ball of yarn who shows up on her first day of work, and she's so excited. And she realizes that she has taken a job at Bro capital. She soon finds out that most of the conversation is what we might in the US refer to as locker room talk, and that she is definitely being excluded, in fact, squeezed out every single chance they get. Some of it's intentional, some of it's just the way it is. So she wants to give up, but she's smart. She knows how to knit. And she realizes that she can knit herself a whole new person and show up as this blocky, strong, aggressive, smart person and be right in there with the boys. And she is. And she loves it. And she's successful. And all of a sudden people are listening to her ideas. And she feels like she is making it. And then another little fuzzy ball of yarn gets hired into Bro Capital. And she's faced with a really big dilemma. At first, she's as mean to this little ball of yarn as everyone else is. But then she realizes that she doesn't have to be. She doesn't have to play by these rules. And in fact, these rules have put her in a suit that's not hers. And so she brings the new little fuzzy ball of yarn into the fold, and everyone's going, okay, I'm not sure how this is going to work out. And in the final scene of Pearl, which is what this is called, you have what we would call a more modern work environment where there are people of lots of sizes and shapes and colors and abilities, and all kinds of creativity is happening, and there's collaboration. Now, this Pixar short just came out about a year ago. And I thought for sure that it was created by a woman my age. You know, someone who'd been through the 1980s, working 9 to 5. Remember those of you out there who remember that movie or who saw it after the fact? Or when I came of age and entered the business world in the 1990s, remember the greed is good era? I was really upset to find out that this was created by a woman in her late 20s. And it's about her very recent experience working in the animation field. So we are by no means over this. And I have to say that most people I encounter in the business world do not move into this hyper masculine, this super cruel, aggressive expression most of the time. So we are recovering from it, but we're not done yet. And here's what I have to tell you. It gets inside of all of us. I have my own inner, I guess, I don't know what I would call it. But I tell you what, there have been times that I have not treated women well in my career. And I can look back and see it now, but at the time I didn't see that I was participating in something that really didn't have my best interest at heart, or really anyone's best interest at heart. So I got interested in this idea of, okay, Lyssa, if you put on all these masculine shells on top of your feminine essence and your feminine energy and capability, just like Pearl in her really blocky suit, what happens when you start dismantling that? What's left? And I literally didn't know what a feminine expression of leadership would be like. So I went all the way back as far as I could to find out, where did this happen? Where did this sort of classification of feminine and masculine start? And it turns out it's a very innocuous, innocent sort of thing. The Taoists in China needed a way to simply say what was on the sunny side of the mountain and what was on the shady side of the mountain, and which side was sunny, and which side was shady. So they said the yang side is sunny and the yin side is shady. That's all it means. And in China today, there are still some towns with the last part of the town name yang or yin, and you know then what side of the mountain the town is on. Very simple, very simple. But the Taoists thought they were onto something, and they said, okay, cool. we can start classifying things. Yes, this side of the mountain's hot, that side is cold. See how it goes. We keep classifying. Now, all of a sudden, we're not talking about mountains. We're talking about other classifications. And now we're even moving into the business world with things like questioning and listening and push and pull. So this is where it originated. Now, at least one place it originated. I do not pretend to be a scholar in this. In fact, in researching this, I've met people who spent decades in the pursuit of really understanding this, and they are amazing. Here's the thing, is that at some point, we made a false choice. Because there was never a choice between yin and yang. The basic idea of it is that both are needed, and in fact, they're interrelated and complementary parts of the same thing. Now, I love this visual of it, and to the extent you're willing, go ahead and let your body start to move sort of in the way of this is going. Like maybe you might do your arms in an infinity circle, and you might allow yourself to like let your hips sway a little bit. And do you see, anyone who's done martial arts knows this. As soon as one side fills up, the other side takes over. And this is the nature of yin and yang. When there's too much yang, we've got to bring in some more yin. When there's too much yin, we got to bring in some more yang. That's the way it goes over and over again. And it can happen in long time scales, like, too much yang for a century or so. Maybe we need a little more yin. It can also happen in very short time scales. In a meeting, we need more yang for the next 10 minutes. We've been in yin for too long. So this is how it is. There's no choice. There's no choice between them. One is not better than the other. The last thing I want is to create another dominator hierarchy. That is not what this is about. But what it is about knowing that all these range of energies are available and that you can choose in the moment for what you think is going to serve the best. Now, holy moly, what are these energies? So there is this book that I found. Now, by the way, the irony of me having to go out into the world to discover what feminine energy is and to see that there's a difference between that and masculine energy is not lost on me. The fact that I couldn't look inside, that's not lost on me. And I think a lot of women feel this right now. But there is this book, Shakti Leadership, and they list the things that, let's say these are more in the yang basket, right? Passion, discernment, clarity, freedom, direction. Allow these words to be said in your mind, and you can feel the direction, you can feel the momentum of them. Now, these are the positive aspects, and these are what's called the hyper masculine or the immature masculine aspects. So this is when it goes too far: cruel, arrogant, aggressive. And we've seen this play out, haven't we? Now, let's look at the complementary side. And we're going to spend much more time with the yin energy. We're actually going to privilege it for the most of the rest of this talk. Here are the yin leadership energies: openness, flow, creativity, wholeness, regenerative. Say these words in your mind, and what will happen is that things will slow down and become immediately deeper. The energy of yin is more like circling. The energy of yang is like moving, and both are needed. Now, there are the hyper yin or the immature yin expressions as well: smothering, irrational, overly sentimental. Now, you might be thinking, how in the world is surrender, for example, one that tends to trigger a lot of women? How in the world is surrender a feminine leadership capacity? I would love to have that conversation with you, because it's something I've been exploring a lot. So here are, I like to say these are baskets. These are baskets of energies available to us at any given moment. And what I want to see in the world is leaders that have the capability of choosing, consciously choosing. Now, I've also noticed that the yin energy is on the rise, and I think that's because the yang has sort of gotten overexpressed, and now our bodies are moving into more yin. when we are in those yin energies, we have the possibility for a new pathway of creation. And that pathway allows us to dive into the depth, even the shadow, like the things we don't want to look at, for example, maybe like our unintended consequences of a business decision we made and now we've hurt someone. It actually allows us to go there, to look at that and include it, and to be moved by our effect on the world and our effect on people. To pick up qualities like beauty, wholeness, intuition, and inclusion, and ask, what if we create from those rather than competition, direction, convergence? What this does is allow us to truly collaborate. Collaboration happens when new things emerge, when co-creation happens, and we're like, wow, where did that idea come from? The problems we're in right now are not problems, they are messes. They are incredibly complex. They don't have an answer. And I believe they need this sort of pathway that the capabilities of yin leadership open up for us. Now, Lynn Twist, I love, she wrote this book called The Soul of Money, and I think she sums up what I just said there. The capacity of the yin energy to be moved and to go toward the pain so you can be useful in the world is part of what the yin gift is. And she says it's a huge part of what women, and I would say yin energy, brings to the world that is absolutely desperately needed. So think about it. Is it absolutely desperately needed? You might find out it is. At least more of the time. Here's another one. Otto Scharmer, the creator of Theory U, who's doing such amazing work in the world. He talks about the fact that we are bringing on new capabilities as human beings in the business world and in the world at large, that we are now able to have not only just empathetic and open-hearted listening, but generative and open presence listening. And from an organizational perspective, that literally the forms of our organizations are changing quite a bit. And we're able to now start to move into a distributed or networked form, and even an ecosystemic form. So for those things to come online, those bottom two in each, I think yin energy has to come online. We can't get there with yang alone. Same thing here. There is this thing called the feminine economy. You can also look up the human economy based on abundance, gratitude, mindfulness, generosity. And if you are tracking exponential tech, you will probably notice that exponential tech people talk about the same sorts of things. They talk about an exponential mindset, an abundance mindset, a gratitude mindset that we actually can create from here, and businesses can be a prototype of the kind of world we want to live in. This is from my home community, the Agile community, and we have these 4 statements of things we value. We value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, and so on and so on. You can see those 4 statements. Well, guess what? Human relationships are in the middle of every single one of those things on the left. And if we are going to fully live into this expression, the yin energy's got to come online. I like how Terry Patton sums it up in his book. He says, when we go deeper, our yin listening has earned us the ability to make something new happen that wasn't there before. Something whole and new becomes possible. So it's very much the feeling of depth, meaning, including it all, even the stuff we don't really want to look at. And from that deeper place, a more complete, whole, and holistic direction comes up, and then we're ready to move forward, like an arrow loosed to a perfect destination. So, I don't know about you, but these are 2 dates that devastated me. In March 2011, we had the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster. And as I watched all that radioactive wastewater get dumped into the ocean, I thought to myself, my God, how did we make this decision to put a nuclear power plant on a fault line on the beach? How did that decision get made? And as bad as that day was for me, just 4 years later, when I learned that cesium-137 is showing up off the coast of Northern California, which, by the way, is the specific signature of this plant, I thought, oh my goodness. There probably are very few genuinely inconsequential business decisions. And I thought to myself, could I have made the decision? Could I have made the decision? Could I have sat there in that boardroom and made the decision to put that nuclear power plant where it got put? And I said to myself, yes. If I were reacting from my shallow yang energy, which I did for a very long time in my career, I absolutely could have made it. I could have made all kinds of justifications for it. I could have had spreadsheets and numbers and all kinds of analysis that would have told us it's the right thing to do. And now bringing on my yin energy, there's no way. There's no way. At least I wouldn't be so quick to judge it. Quick to judge that it was the right thing to do. We're in the middle of a pandemic. And Olga talked about this in the introduction, that there are so many things that are shaking us up right now, and rightfully so. There's an amazing poet, her name is Lynn Unger, and she wrote a poem that she released on March 11th, at the beginning of the pandemic. The poem is called Pandemic. And she says, know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are literally in one another's hands. Surely that has come clear. Surely that's come clear. I surely hope that is coming clear. So I think that what's at stake is the possibility of us being able to move to decision making at the highest levels in organizations, decisions that have real import, that include all of the available energies and allow us to choose which one is going to serve in the moment so that we're not operating out of remote control or out of our reactive. Now, what I want to do at this point is turn to some practical tactical, because I can imagine that you're sitting there going, okay, this is really, interesting, or like, I totally don't buy what she's saying. Whatever's happening is cool. But I don't want to keep it at the level of, big ideas and referencing a bunch of other big thinkers. I want to bring it down to what are some possible pathways, at least. One possible pathway is through the work of Bill Adams and Bob Anderson, and maybe some of you know them. Their book, Mastering Leadership, is very popular, as well as other books they've written. They are the creators of the thing called the Leadership Circle, which in my opinion is the most complete way for a leader to mature their leadership to be a match for the 21st century. So let me just give you like a hint of what the Leadership Circle does and why I think it's important for us to be able to step into more of an integrated, choiceful ability to choose the energies that are needed. So the Leadership Circle, this is what the profile looks like. Don't worry, there's not going to be a test on this. There's a lot to look at. The bottom half of the profile measures what they call the reactive styles: complying, protecting, and controlling. And you can see the different dimensions that are measured here. We all have some amount of reactive styles in this, and there are some organizations that run completely from the reactive. And from the reactive, there's not enough time to connect with the vision and passion of what you want to create in the world. But when you are able then to move from the reactive styles into what's called the creative competencies, then you have the systems and self-awareness to bring on board the choice point. The choice point that says, gosh, We have been running around in this meeting for the last 2 hours. Everyone's going, talk, 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 idea, 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 idea. And we're not getting anywhere. So maybe it's my job to step in the middle here and say, hang on, I want to take us through a 30-second centering so we can reconsider where we are right now and consider what we need to go in the depth into. It's a possibility. Now, let me tell you how this works. The reason I'm suggesting this, it's not because Bob Anderson and Bill Adams think this is a way of developing yin energy. I can't wait to talk to them about this, actually. I think it's an innovation on top of what they've already created. And I really honor what they've created, because what it does is this profile shows you what's going on, but more importantly, why it's going on. What are the limiting beliefs underneath the things that run your behavior? And then what's your pathway for change? And what that makes possible is moving from a problem reacting orientation to the stuff that comes up every day to an outcome creating orientation. And that outcome creating orientation is necessarily more inclusive of yin and yang energies and more choiceful of what's needed in the moment. So that is one pathway. And then someone asked me recently, okay, great. So let's say that I can do that for myself. Let's say that I can get my team to start thinking about this. What's next? How do I take this to my organization? And I really don't know the answer to that. But I know that the people I'm working with, the leaders I'm working with, where they're expanding their range of leadership and their range of energies, they start to see their organization very differently. And they start to see more clearly the things that need to change. And they're not even seeing the old things they knew needed to change. They're seeing even new categories of things that they now want to change. So start with yourself is my advice. You can't give to people what you don't have, but you can go on this journey with them. So yourself, then your leadership teams, or yourself and your leadership teams together. If you already have this, if you already have the ability to operate in all these different dimensions, then please don't keep it to yourself. Your leadership teams need that desperately. I see it all the time in the way leadership teams interact. They need it desperately, and your organization does too. That's my assertion. Now, let me give you two more practical things. These are much closer to home, and there are two things you can do right away. You don't need any help with a profile or anything like that. These are two ideas that over time I found hold people back the most from their full self-expression and from moving into the yin energies, because the yin energies have been so marginalized for so long, especially in business. Now, I find this in both men and women and people who don't identify as men or women. And here's the first notion. I am enough. So many people are walking around believing that they need that next certification, then they will finally understand things, they will finally be enough. Or they sit quiet in meetings thinking, my idea is not that important. Why do I think I should speak up? Imposter syndrome is running rampant in organizations. So this is the first basic idea or notion to start to bring on board. And the second one is this: my body is wise. Now let's do this. We're just about to the end of this talk, and we're going to get into Q&A in a moment. So start to rub your hands together really fast like this. Those of you who do Qigong will know what I'm up to here. You're going to build up some heat in your hands. And when you got enough heat, in a moment, you're going to put your hands anywhere on your body where your body would welcome that and enjoy it. Oh, and allow the heat from your hands and the energy from your hands to come in. Most of us in the corporate world are completely cut off from the wisdom of our bodies. Even just from the raw data that our bodies give us. You don't even have to believe your body is wise. Your body's giving you data all the time. So if you reclaim that, if you can work not only from this brain in your head, but this brain in your heart and this brain in your gut, then you'll just have access to a lot more information. So let me give you some specific pathways if you need to work on these two ideas. And many people at all levels in organizations that I see are working on one or both of these notions. If you need to work on I am enough, my first piece of advice is hire a coach. Hire a coach. Working on I am enough is not a big deal necessarily. It's not going to take a lifetime necessarily, but a coach can help accelerate. Also, take control of your own internal state. Remember we did that dignity, belonging, sufficiency thing? You can do that in the 10 seconds before you get on Zoom for the next meeting. And my friend and colleague, Deb Preuss, at this URL has an 8-minute one that she walks you through. You can do that a few times and get it in your bones. If you need to work on my body is wise, I would suggest any kind of yoga, but especially yin yoga and this yin movement. There's a bunch of these free movement videos at a place called koya.love. That's an internet address. And for those of you needing to reclaim the notion of feminine wisdom, Body of Wisdom is a great book. And for those of you recovering from trauma, and so many of us are, The Body Keeps the Score is a great place to start or to continue your journey, reclaiming your body's wisdom for yourself. So this is where we are together. Same question we started with. These are some things I've been paying attention to. These are some things I've been working with the teams and the individual leaders I work with. And I invite us into the conversation together. And if you want to know what I've been up to on my website, you can go to Lyssa's last 3 and find out. Thank you for your attention. And now I look forward to finding out what happened while I was away looking at my slides.
Well, so I think what now we'll do, you said you wanted to see faces. So I will, Charlie, we will pull everybody across into panelist mode.
I didn't realize that was going to be a tech issue. Sorry about that if I created that.
No, not at all. It's actually quite easy. That's why I have Charlie here. So for those of you, of course, who have called in, no big deal. Still listen. Of course, you won't be put in panelist mode, but by all means, keep listening. And yeah. Oh, just give us a second as we start doing that. And there's Annette. Hi, Annette.
Hey, Annette. Annette of the great glasses.
She's always got great glasses.
I have a question if we're up for Q&A already.
Go for it.
So once again, I find myself the only woman in a room full of men.
Yeah.
And I have been doing a lot of work on myself before I took on this role. I took a year off. I was doing a lot of this kind of integration work and recovering from some burnout and things. And I'm just wondering, do you have any advice or guidance on bringing that yin energy in to a place where the consciousness might not be elevated enough to receive it welcomely?
Yeah. I just want to acknowledge that, you know, in a lot of environments where it's sort of an uphill battle, you know. I think, well, the one thing I would say, and that you've already done so much of this, is just keep your own inner work going. If nothing else, just for your own sanity and your own completeness, you know, your wholeness. And, you know, there are little things, like, you know, when I'm working with a group like that, that's got a lot of yang energy, especially a lot of shallow yang energy. Little things I'll do is just say, okay, hang on. Now, keep in mind, I'm a facilitator and a coach. And so that's a different role with rank and privilege that has more or less depending on the moment. But when it has a lot of rank and privilege is when I can stop the action and say, hang on just a second. I'm noticing that we do this thing where we have idea, and we're actually not going into any of them. So what I do is I notice the pattern that's happening. And you may or may not be able to do that given your role, you know? And also just, I don't know, I think facilitators and coaches are like really good scapegoats for this sort of thing. If you bring people in who can work with a group's patterns and name them and help the group stretch into a fuller range, like just whatever is on the other side of the stuff they're so used to, then it could help. I realize it's sort of a self-serving answer because that's what I do, but I don't know another way. You know, actually, the people here might know some other ways, Annette.
Yeah, well, if we're up for discussion, I welcome other ideas. And thank you for that. That's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Who else? Feel free to raise your hand. There's the reactions at the bottom of your screen that you could do that, or just unmute yourself and ask. That's also fine. So I've got one. I was over here. That's why you saw my eyes keep wandering. How do you become more aware of which energy to call forth in various situations? It's like, what's the thing that, whether it's, I don't know if it's like a tightening or like you know that you're not quite in the mindset that maybe you should be.
Yeah.
That nature.
You know, I'm still learning that myself because I had, you know, I had so marginalized the yin energy for so long. And in fact, even really thought it was weak and had no place in business. And and then found out that I wasn't getting the business results I wanted. You know, and so I started looking like, well, what am I missing? Oh, well, I'm missing this huge part of myself that's actually innate. So one of the things that it has helped me know when a different energy is needed is that I spent 6 months with a somatic coach. And what that coach did was help me understand my body's early warning signals that would tell me that I was sort of gearing up to be the, you know, the champion, like the fighter, and then realize, hang on, is that what's needed right now? Or is that just a habitual response or a defense? And so I learned to be able to first relax that in myself and to open my breathing and my chest a little bit. My little way of doing it is to put my hands on my thighs, which you can do in any meeting. And especially now in Zoom, no one's even seeing your thighs anymore. You know, just put your hands there and just ground yourself that you're actually in a body. So that's one thing that clues me in. But that was 6 months of coaching for me to be able to really do that in a consistent way. I think the biggest thing you can do sort of on the surface level is just notice when the conversation is not going anywhere good, when it's recycling. I mean, maybe you guys have the same problem I see in a lot of the leadership teams where the conversation recycles. It feels like we're having the same topic come up again and again. That's one place, or where it gets stuck, or where it's manic. Anytime it's too much of something, then bring in the other side. We can also get now in some corporations, we get too much on the yin side. We're all sitting around talking to each other all day long and we're not moving anywhere. You know, it's a very nice and it's like a family and it feels really good and we can't get off the dime. So that's when it's a little bit too much of the yin. Yeah. Hey, Tommy.
I was just about to ask a question. My kids have come back from school, so sorry about the screaming kids in the background. Thank you, Lyssa, for sharing. This is really incredible stuff. I've been on my own journey the last 6 months, a lot of stress, job changes, and all that kind of thing. And I certainly know my last few months of my last job, I was drifting into the yang. I definitely have trigger responses, and I get quite aggressive and defensive. And a lot of the things you're talking about, you know, mindfulness and listen to your body's triggers and is really powerful. As I get back into sort of back to work and more of a team environment and things like that, what are things that you can do rather than internally, but how do you get your team to help you with some of those things as well? So there's sort of techniques, or you mentioned like about the individual, then your leadership team, then your organization, but I'd be interested to know ideas of how to sort of have this conversation with a new team or colleagues and get them to protect you from your triggers and going into your dark yang side, so to speak.
So you have the most amazing opportunity, Tommy, because especially at the beginning, you have the chance to set it up the way you want it to go. right? And so you can show up in your wholeness the way you want to show up. And you might step into the yin leadership capacity of vulnerability and say to them, hey, I am an accomplished leader and my journey's not over either. Here's the thing I'm working on. And I want to let you know this is my developmental edge. You'll know I am not working it when you see these things happen. So I'd love for you to let me know. So just imagine what happens if a leader does that. So much could become available to an organization that's not there right now. How did that go, Tommy?
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I was nervous about, I'm actually kind of excited about now. So
yeah, you can look it up. You can look up the notion of designing alliances. The professional coaching world knows how to do this really, really well. There's lots of information about designing alliances. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Hilary, did you have a question? I see your hand raised. Nope, we can't hear you. Doesn't say that you're muted.
I double muted myself. I got a little demon puppy
she
running around in the background.
Well, she has that super high tech thing where she has to fold it down. Yeah,
I don't know that it's all that high tech, but Lyssa, great content, really interesting topic. One of the things you touched on was just kind of the need, especially in Agile, for both the yin and the yang. And can you talk maybe a little bit more about that correlation and if working kind of in an Agile way predisposes, things to come out differently or to provide some of that balance?
So there's another piece of information I'll bring in here to answer that question a little bit, Carrie. If we look at the research into something called spiral dynamics, and those of you who've read the book Reinventing Organizations by Frederic Laloux will be a little bit familiar with this model. But spiral dynamics basically tells us how the human race is evolving. And right now our evolution is primarily mental complexity instead of physical traits, right? And the level of mental complexity at which Agile starts to come really fully online is something called pluralistic relationship driven. And so, Carrie, remind me of your question. I'm headed down this road and now I want to make sure it's really going to connect.
I think really just understanding if kind of working in an Agile way, if I start to naturally kind of bring out more of that balance.
Yeah, so it does because the not necessarily the Agile, well, actually what the Agile practices are trying to express in your organization, and definitely the Agile values and principles underneath those practices come from the level of thinking called relationship-driven pluralistic. And at that level, what we're doing as human beings is that we're picking up the ability to handle multiple perspectives. And what Olga said at the beginning, the ability to handle multiple competing ideas in our head at the same time and still function. So because of that, it's just a much more expanded view of the world. And in fact, a world-centric sensibility comes online at that level of human development. And so I think that's what you're seeing. I think that Agile's participating with that more than Agile creates it. But Agile's a damn good excuse. It really is, because it comes with the practices that allow that expression to at least have a chance of flourishing in an organization.
And one of the benefits of the systems that Agile brings and the framework is that you can use things like your working agreement when you're forming new teams to really kind of solidify and crystallize what your intention is and where those strong alliances need to be. Mm-hmm. And where you need to shine the light. Because a lot of teams are really aware of, potentially dysfunctional or unproductive behaviors. And it's a great way to actually surface them and put them down on paper and address them and keep each other accountable to them.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I think about that right now, what we're up to as human beings and the business world participating in the world, that really there's lots of little streams kind of coming into the same river. So there's complexity theory, there's Agile, there's the way human society is evolving. There's just the exponential growth in almost everything. Interconnectivity, complexity, changeability, volatility, like all of that is in the same thing together. And I love Agile because Agile has both the tactical pieces and the belief system underneath it to help us metabolize all of that without going crazy. Hi.
This is Laurel.
Hi, Laurel.
Just wondering how what your perspective is with the Me Too movement in helping leaders step into giving opportunities to women, or how you're seeing that, I guess, raise any type of level of consciousness in the business coaching, and how you're helping organizations start to shift.
Laura, my bet, honestly, is that you and the other folks here will have more experience with that. My professional work is with a few leaders and leadership teams right now and in the last year. And prior to that, I was teaching thousands of Agilists the skills of Agile coaching for several years. So while the Me Too movement was happening, I was not in multiple organizations seeing what's going on. So that's a big disclaimer for a perspective that I do have on it. And the perspective is Me Too, Black Lives Matter, the stories we're telling now about how life is for people, how life has been for people, is all about our ability to pick up those multiple perspectives and our ability to honor the fact that people have walked different paths and they've been hurt by systems and structures and others, even us, even me, unintentionally. So I am hoping and believing that we are ready for a more real and nuanced set of conversations in business. And I think that Me Too is part of sort of, I was going to say softening the ground, but it might be like taking a jackhammer to the ground to help make that happen. And it's not, what's interesting about that is that it's not coming from the perspective of, oh, we're so smart, this is what we need to do. It's coming from the perspective of pain. It's coming from the perspective of that short Pearl that I talked about in the beginning. Really go watch that. Watch the pain that we are all still in from some of these environments that are just so incredibly toxic. Now I'm looking at your faces and imagining that's not the case in most of the places where you all work.
That it's not toxic, or it is?
It's not.
They're all degrees of toxicity.
Yeah.
It's really what it is.
Yeah.
Right. And, I think it's still going to take it some time to really break those down. And I think some of the worst of what's most toxic is what's missing that feminine energy the most.
Yeah. This is why I'm really committed to working with individual leaders, because there absolutely is a transformation afoot from that problem reacting orientation to an outcome creating orientation. And basically that's what's up. That's what's up for leaders on the planet right now.
I got a question.
Hey, Michael.
Hi, how you doing? I'm curious, with the newer generation coming up, are you seeing them gravitate or maybe be more open to yang than versus yang? I come from a military background, so obviously I was coming from the yang background, and through time I've migrated towards using yin. But with the younger generation, do you see differences in that?
I do. There are so many backhanded benefits from the pandemic in my life. And one of them is that my daughter who graduated college just right at the beginning of the pandemic, 23 years old, and her boyfriend moved into our house. No one planned that little, side trip. But I got to see their relationship, and I got to see how he is in the world. And he is definitely not a pushover. And he can definitely include the yin capabilities. In fact, she's not a pushover either. See, this is the thing, is that I watch them have a greater range of possibilities in the way they relate to each other. That's how I think about it. And Brené Brown talks about it this way too in leadership. She talks about strong back, soft front, wild heart. You know, that it's possible to have all three of those on board as you're leading in the world. And I do. So Michael, I do think, and maybe it's just that I hope it's coming online more.
Okay, thank you.
And with that, we're just past the hour. So I love all the curiosity. If you still have questions, I am going to be sending a follow-up email shortly here. Well, no, it'll probably be Monday because I've got to get the recording edited. But there will be a list of the books that Lyssa mentioned. We'll have the Pearl video on there and some of the other resources and programming alliances. And Lyssa, if you think of any others that I did not just name, please send them to me and I'll include those as well. So thank you. Happy Friday. And we'll see you all soon.
Yeah, thank you all. Really appreciate your attention.
Thank you so much.